You're watching The Informal Game. My name's Griff. I've got Chris back behind the camera. This is a show that mostly covers kind of old school stuff, but there's sort of like things that old gamers do that probably are useful even in new games. Today I'm going to talk about playing a faster kind of game where you don't use initiative. You just use parallel actions, which is the way it turns out people like Dave Arneson did their games. They would just run it like a war game and both sides get to attack. So stay tuned and we'll talk about parallel actions. Okay, parallel actions. This is kind of a weird one. Some people really are attached to their initiative rolls and getting that early hack in before the bad guy does. When I played Blackmoor with Bob Meyer, who is the last Blackmoor dungeon master, he didn't use initiative at all. He just said, you get an attack and you get an attack. If you both hit, you both hit. That's how we're doing the game. And he didn't have any rules written down, so it was kind of you just roll dice and he'd tell you if you'd hit something, because it was all being done kind of like the way Arneson was doing it when he first started Blackmoor back in the very beginning. When I was a kid, I didn't really know how to handle combats very well, and I would always run into these issues of initiative. What happens first? If the monster gets a hit killing the player and the player gets a hit killing the monster and they happen at the same time, how do I resolve that? If you do a game without initiative and you just use parallel actions, it's really simple. You just go to each player and you say, what are you doing? And they say, I'm going to whack the monster, and they roll their dice, or I'm going to cast a spell, or I'm just hanging out, I'm going through my backpack, I'm going to get out a potion. Everybody gets to do their actions, and then using combat diagrams, like I showed you in the last show, you then figure out which monster is able to hit which person, and you roll their attacks, and you just tally up the damage for everybody, and at the end of the turn, the result is the result you have. Some things kind of feel weird, like some actions maybe should happen at the end of a turn. And this is kind of a big theoretical discussion. Original Dungeons and Dragons had kind of a goofy turn length. They said that combat rounds were 1 minute long. And I've read Gary Gygax's writings on what he thought about combat, which is a very abstract thing where each combat round, when you're rolling for a hit, it's not like you're rolling for an individual hack. You're rolling for your chance to successfully hit your opponent while you're parrying and dodging and sort of fencing with them for whatever the duration of the combat turn is. And so things like spells and stuff, it seems kind of weird if they just happen instantly at the beginning of the turn, because everything's supposed to happen simultaneously. So it's worth considering. Maybe lower level spells happen really fast. More powerful spells maybe don't take effect till the end of the combat round. It's really up to you how do you want to handle all the details. But if you use this system of not having any initiative, it makes combats happen a lot faster, because I just go around the table and I say, you, what are you doing? You, what are you doing? You, what are you doing? And then if I hit somebody that's dilly-dallying, you always got that player that's like, you get to them and it's almost like they weren't there for the past half hour, and they're like, what die should I roll? What am I doing? Who am I? And that's when I get a little bit mean, and I'll do I'll just be like, what are you doing? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Not that fast, a little slower. But once they get the countdown, they're just like, oh, I hack at the monster. And they do their thing and grab their dice, and I can move to the next player. Combat, I think, should happen kind of fast, because it makes it feel kind of panicked and real if you're handling your combats a little faster. It's not, we're not sitting on divans and drinking tea when we're playing a game like that, when our characters are in combat. We're in the combat, and it should feel exciting and dramatic. Another thing I like to do is add dramatic language to my combat. So I'll describe to the players what their result is. If they get a hit and they roll a good damage that kills the monster, I'll be like, yeah, you cut him down and step forward and another one comes up before you. Things like that. I try to make it interesting for my players, and I'm not really a good actor. You just saw what I just did. I'm But it adds a little bit of energy to the moment. Other things you can think about is, if other things you can think about are if a caster is casting their spell and maybe it's a fireball and it shouldn't go off till the end of the turn, and one of the bad guys is trying to shoot an arrow to distract the caster and he hits him with an arrow. Well, maybe that should be something where the caster has to make a saving roll or something to see if they can keep their concentration. It's up to you. How do you want to handle it? Do you want to have it be that they just are distracted because they got hit by an arrow? Or do you want to give them, maybe roll under your intelligence with a d20 to see if you can stay focused enough to finish that spell? It's all up to you. Other things, longer weapons like spears. I like to have spears. Say the monsters are charging the party and the party is armed with spears. I think the party should get a free attack before the monsters get an attack. Maybe not a free attack. Well, maybe even a free attack. It depends on the situation. If they're 60 feet away and they're running at the party, it takes a while for them to get there. So the players can brace themselves with their spears, and they get a freebie round of attacks on the monsters who are throwing themselves on these spears. And then you go back to normal combat. Things like that add a lot of interest to the game. One thing, well, the whole situation of like a player hitting a monster and killing it, and a monster hitting a player and killing them. Some people don't like that, and Chris and I had a big discussion about this the other day. And one thing you could do is you just roll 3d6 on the spot and come up with a dexterity value for your monster. And then you compare it to the player that they're fighting against. And if the monster wins or the player wins, whoever wins is the one who gets the killing blow, and the other person doesn't take any damage. If they happen to get like a tie, maybe they do hit each other. I mean, that does happen in things like fencing, and even in real wars it would happen. The main thing is just you keep the combats going fast, and you can use what I keep calling reasonable expectations gives you reasonable results. And so you can, as a dungeon master, you're making decisions on the fly for the players. Sometimes they might not agree, and you can negotiate with them. Instead of saying, no, you can't do that, you say, okay, what do you think should happen here? And they can tell you what their feeling is about the situation, and you go like, well, okay, I'm willing to go with that. Because you're not there to be the enemy dungeon master. You're there to create an interesting world for them to play in. That's pretty much it. It's a really simple way to handle combat. It's super fast. I'm all about running fast games. I love it when my players can clear out half a dungeon level in one session. Hopefully that is useful information, and you might want to try it out in your own game. If you have any questions, as always, leave the questions in the comments. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, and come back next time and watch more of The Informal Game.